All right, you ready? So Peter, thank you. Thank you for coming. 301 West Bay here in downtown Jacksonville. Appreciate you spending a few minutes talking about downtown Jacksonville with us. Real quick, tell us about your background. Tell us where you grew up. Are you a local? Are you an out-of-towner? Tell us a little bit about yourself and then what you do now in Jacksonville.
I've been here about 20 years, so I feel like a local, but I did grow up in the Denver area.
Okay.
And I grew up in a neighborhood that was one of Ian McHarg's, and Ian McHarg inspired developments. Ian McHarg wrote a book called Design with Nature, and I took it for granted back then, but it was a very beautiful place that had a lot of common areas, preserved space, trails.
Suburban, or was
suburban,
it? Okay.
The compact development.
Okay.
With alleys, accessing rear-facing garages, and I took for granted. I thought everybody lived this way, but I learned when I left that neighborhood that most everybody did not. I came to Jacksonville to work for the military, to do long-range planning for the military, Air Force bases around the world. And when that work was finished, did planning for engineering companies and also public sector. Worked for the city of Jacksonville, plan director for Nassau County. And after I left Nassau County, I started my own planning consulting firm, doing code work, land planning.
Okay.
And I have my real estate license. Been getting into development as well, and I own and manage my own rental properties that I rent mostly to lower income folks.
Okay, so 20 years you've been here. Mm-hmm. Have you seen a lot of change in Jacksonville, or would you say it's been kind of status quo? What's your take on kind of the past 20 years?
Well, 20 years, yeah. I mean, there's been tremendous growth in the suburbs. So when I first moved here, I lived off Southside Boulevard and near Avenues Mall.
Yeah.
And east of that, there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could literally just go hiking out there, like in the woods.
Yeah.
And there was a bear. I saw a bear out there. And when 295 was under construction, I rode my bike on 295 before it was open to traffic.
Nice.
And of course, downtown has changed tremendously.
Okay.
It used to be a no-go zone most of the time that I've lived here, but now it's had a lot more people and businesses, so things have changed downtown.
So what are some areas, I guess, across the country or across the world that you've looked at that you think have a great downtown? What are some things that stand out to you in terms of what you've seen, and then what you want out of a downtown? Like, what does it take to have a great, vibrant downtown?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I've traveled around the world, and I think, and this is going to sound funny, but I think one of the best places I've been to that is the most like Jacksonville, because it shares a similar history to Jacksonville, being a post-Civil War Southern industrial waterfront,
okay.
Historically dependent on the shipping,
yep.
And the industrial along the river, which is Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And a lot of people don't know this. You have to be a native to Tennessee, but Chattanooga at one point was extremely blighted.
Okay.
And all along that waterfront and all the industrial abandoned buildings, you had water and sewer, stormwater and sanitary sewer mixed together in the same pipes,
okay.
Right out into the river.
Okay.
You had, it was dangerous in places. You had lighting problems. You had a highway right on the river, which bifurcated the river from downtown. And it was just a really bad situation.
Okay.
At one point, they decided to turn around. They did visioning, and they basically said, not what can we do, what could we do?
Okay.
And they had some really big big ideas. And if you were to go there today, you would see what they've done. It's really tremendous what they've
Interesting.
done there. Yeah.
Is it? Are there residential units that they've got down
Yes.
there? Is it retail? Is it all of the
Everything.
above?
Everything.
Office.
Everything.
Thriving office environment.
They have an aquarium that's basically like a high-rise building. It's a vertical aquarium.
Oh wow.
They closed that road on the Tennessee River and turned it into a pedestrian. It's actually can be used for traffic, but when they have events, they close the whole thing.
Okay.
Turn it into a pedestrian area.
Yeah.
They have an Imax theater downtown. They've got lots of housing, rental and condo.
Okay.
They have historic buildings. They've got retail. And they've got a beautiful museum right on the river.
So arts, cultural.
Arts, culture.
Retail.
Retail,
all of the above, huh?
And the property values are shocking if you were to look at some of the listings of the condos that are being built there.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah.
So what role, if you know, what role did government, I guess, play in that revitalization? And if you don't know the specifics, that's fine. What should, Jacksonville's government do? What is their role in revitalization or attracting retail, residential? What do they do?
Well, I think public investment. Like when one of the very first things that Chattanooga did was to build that aquarium, which was a huge public investment.
Yeah.
The closure of that road, the creation of that bandstand or whatever it is there on the river, the separation of the stormwater from the sewer. All this was tremendous public investment.
Okay.
That was required in order to encourage businesses to come back.
Okay.
Lighting, safety, things like that. And I think an important thing is government needs to be like the boots on the ground, so to speak, and walking into people's doors and shaking people's hands and saying, what's going on? What do you need? What can we do for you?
Okay.
What do you see as an issue?
If they were to knock on your door, mayor's office, city council, whoever, if they were to knock on your door for Jacksonville and specific to downtown, what would you tell them? What would you say? Listen, guys, we have to fix X, Y, and Z. What would your top priorities be?
Well, that's an excellent question. I would say we need to encourage people to take ownership in downtown, and not only ownership in a literal sense, but in a metaphorical sense. Ownership as far as owning their own condo, or
Right.
owning their own townhome or whatever. And you see some of that going on over by JTA right now.
Right.
Also, creating maybe some pedestrian areas, areas that are completely closed to traffic.
Emerald Trail. Is that a good start?
That's more for transportation, but I'm talking about as more of a pedestrian mall like they have in Knoxville, Tennessee. Downtown Knoxville, Tennessee has one where they closed a road.
Right.
Downtown Tampa has one where
Right.
they closed a road.
Right.
And I think the ownership gets created when you have, instead of people going from their car to their office and from their office to their car and driving, and they never see anything that's happening. They're not on, their feet aren't on the ground, they're not on their bike, they're not on their scooter, not on their feet looking in windows, they're
Okay.
just driving in and driving out. And I think maybe if we had a better pedestrian experience that from that core, we can build out from there. And so I think that Gateway Jacks is probably going to be a good,
Right.
and the UF I think will be a very similar situation.
So you mentioned two big projects, two mega projects that are going on in downtown Jacksonville right now. Gateway Jacks is mainly residential, right? For rent, residential. I think it's market rate. They may have some affordable in there. I'm not sure, but and then UF, which is totally different, right? That is 100% education, higher degrees, master's degrees in artificial intelligence, computer science. How important is that aspect to, I guess, a downtown and then a community in general? I mean, do you give that a lot of weight?
The campus, you mean?
The campus, and then what they're bringing, students, and then hopefully the students stay, right? Like, how important do you think that is?
I think the UF expansion into La Villa behind the Prime Osborne there is a game changer.
Yep.
Not only because of the fact that it's UF and you're going to have all these students come in, but you're going to have a critical mass of size where you'll be able to do some of the things that you can't do on an individual building or block by block basis. And they'll be able to create an atmosphere that includes a lot of the elements that make a downtown work well. And it'll spill out onto the rest of downtown. There'll be more demand for housing. There'll be more demand for maybe maker space, or who knows? What could happen? I mean, maybe somebody goes across the street and that graduates say, well, I want to start a business doing 3D printing. Of whatever. I mean, it's the possibilities are limitless. We can't probably conceive of all the things that could happen once that seed is planted in that area. So it's pretty exciting for Jacksonville.
Yeah. Do you think that Jacksonville, and specifically downtown, I guess, do you think that we have an identity crisis? You look at different cities. Austin is weird. They're known for being weird. Tampa has Water Street and downtown and Channel Side. Like, do we have an identity? Do we need an identity? What do people from the outside think of when they think of downtown Jacksonville? And if we don't have one, do we need to get one?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. Jacksonville, for its entire history, has been a transportation hub. CSX headquarters is here. And I actually stumbled onto a YouTube video of a guy that his whole thing is videoing trains.
Okay.
I don't know how I got this in my feed, but he actually videoed himself right around the corner in front of CSX, filming the trains going over that little bridge. This is CSX. This is the headquarters of the train hub, and it's Jacksonville, Florida. And he's like all excited.
I need to get this guy on our next podcast.
Exactly, yeah. And so there's that, and there's the shipping, you know. And I guess Jacksport jurisdiction doesn't come downtown anymore, but it used to. There used to be shipping, right out there. So maybe we need to kind of go to this history of the transportation, and really sink our teeth into that, and create an identity based on that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got CSX right across the street.
Right.
You got that. This is their corporate global headquarters. Right. So is there a way to build on them and what the jobs that they've had? What about? I always like to, I guess, ask people's thoughts on the homeless situation in downtown. You hear all kinds of things. You see, the best one I think is there's no more homeless people in downtown Jacksonville than any other major city. We just don't have the pedestrians, so they stand out more. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true. That's probably accurate. How big of an issue is the homeless problem? Maybe it's not a problem at all. Do you think that there's ways to solve it, or do we need to focus on other things? Like any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So that's not my really my wheelhouse with the homeless issue. Affordable housing obviously is impacts that.
Yep.
So that's important. But it could be that we need better day facilities.
Okay.
Where they can go during the day.
Okay.
And hang out or do places where they can be helped. A lot of people are homeless they might have problems with drug addiction.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to a meeting and former Sheriff Rutherford was the speaker, and he said, look, the biggest problem I have people who are spending more than half the year in jail, but I'm not able to consolidate that into 6 months. I have to keep them for 2 or 3 days, let them out, keep them for 2 or 3 days, let them out, keep them,
Yeah.
So he's not able to keep them long enough to rehabilitate them. And so there's things that can be done. Like I said, it's kind of out of my wheelhouse. But that point you brought up about the mix being off is absolutely true.
Sure.
I think if we were like Portland, where you have barely enough space on the sidewalk for people to walk during lunch, those people just kind of, when I went to Portland, I did see homeless people. But they weren't so much a focus because
there were so many other people.
So many people, so much activity.
Yeah.
It really blew me away what a lunch was like in downtown Portland.
You mentioned the jail a minute ago and just people in and out of jail. There's been talk about moving the jail from out of downtown. Do you support that? Is it, from a planning standpoint, your background, is that, is it likely? Is it necessary? Can we build around it? Downtown Fort Lauderdale, their jail is on the river, surrounded by high-rise multi-million-dollar condos.
Right.
So it doesn't have to move. Would you move it if you were mayor?
I think we've got bigger fish to fry, frankly. It's there. It's if it serves its purpose and it's functional, what is the cost benefit?
Yeah.
That's why you have to look at all public infrastructure. I'm going to spend millions and millions of dollars moving this facility and trying to site it somewhere else, and then knock it down. And what benefit do we really get out of that, and what impact does that have on our city? I would say we need to improve downtown, and,
right.
and like you said, the prison just sort of disappears at that point.
Right. The city has several other lots.
Right.
That they own that there's no structure on it. Let's figure out what to do with those first.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
if that's the last
Correct.
hole in the donut, then we can address it then.
Correct. If it was like the generation plant downtown that got knocked down, where it's got noise and smoke and whatever, I don't know, maybe I think it was a coal burning plant. Obviously a noxious use, but I just don't see that as being the prison as being a noxious use. No, I tend to agree. What are your thoughts on government incentives as a way to spur downtown development? And let me preface it like this. If you were to go to downtown Miami and ask the government of Miami, hey, I need a bunch of government incentives to build an office building, you'd get laughed out of the room. Like, they don't do that. There's not a need to do that in downtown Miami. A developer can come in, buy a piece of dirt, put up a building, and make the numbers work. Right.
It doesn't appear that right now we can do that in downtown Jacksonville. The numbers don't really work. You need a lot of government, assistance, if you will. Do you have thoughts on government's role? Should they be doing that? Is it good? Do we hopefully reach a point where deals do pencil?
Well, you've got the you've got that gap, right, that developers run into sometimes.
Right.
You see it a lot with affordable housing, where
Right.
you know, you have the land costs this much, and the construction costs this much, and I need to get this much rent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then you have that gap. So that's where government and public agencies or other grants,
Right.
granting agencies, or maybe NGOs kind of step in to fill that gap.
And they do it.
Yeah.
They're doing it a lot with rev grants on the real estate taxes. If you complete it, we'll abate your taxes for a number of years. You're
Right.
in favor of that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this stuff like this has been going on for a very long time. Like I myself have used that historic tax credit, that 20% historic tax credit, to save some homes in Springfield. And
Okay.
I did 3 of them, and that 20% tax credit is a, you know, that's substantial help and spending that money you need to save those old homes, because you know, a lot of times a historic building is, you know, the first thing people think is, you know, we got to knock it down so we can make something bigger and
Right.
better, you know. But if your goal as a public is to save historic structures, well, then you got to do it, you know. Downtown Denver just passed this bill where they're going to come up with, I forget what the exact number was. It was crazy. It was tens of millions of dollars in funding to do just that.
Okay.
To do affordable plus save historic buildings and conversion of use.
Okay.
They don't pencil out very well at all, the conversions of uses.
Right.
So
Right.
the city of Denver, city and county of Denver is coming up with this massive incentive plan to get some of these buildings back into the, you know, get them back into the, what am I trying to say, the hopper as far as being used again.
Yeah.
Mostly for
back into
residential,
circulation.
because these obsolete office buildings, you know, nobody wants them. So anyway, so I do believe it has a role.
Yeah.
You know, to get that gap and make things happen. Yeah.
I think we all kind of agree that there is a gap, and that if government can fill that, you know, great. How, broadly speaking, though, out to the MSA level, how do we as a community, how do we as a region grow enough so that we don't have to rely on the government for these types of funding, you know, gaps? How do we go, like Jacksonville is, you know, last in the state of the major MSAs for, you know, GDP. We're lowest in the state of major MSAs for college educated workforce.
Right.
Like, how do we, you know, you mentioned, you know, laying into CSX and the logistics.
Right.
Like, are there other ways that you can think of that we can lift the entire region up with better paying jobs, higher incomes, so that we don't have to rely on government for help?
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the issues is, you know, Jacksonville is massive. It's like, is it the first or second largest
City in
land
America.
Land
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
You know, we have some huge economic drivers. We've got the Navy here.
Right.
You know, we've got Cecil Field. You know,
Yeah.
and, with all things that are going on there. I think you really have to start with a core, or multiple cores, and work your way out from those. You know.
Okay.
And I think downtown's a great place to start.
Okay.
You know, you see it starting to happen in Brooklyn, and
Yep.
especially, and create a place where people really want to be. You know, where stuff's happening. You know, the arts. You know.
Yes.
And I think we have to think about, well, what is the arts? Well, it's not just
The ballet.
it's not just the ballet, and it's not just the sculpture on the sidewalk. It's things like people who bake stuff, and in Portland, they've got the Voodoo Donut Shop,
Okay.
which is the craziest thing I've ever seen. They've got donuts, maple donuts with bacon on top, and a cream cheese. What is it? A cheesecake, cross between a cheesecake and a donut. Anyway, it's pure, wacky, unlimited creativity.
All right.
And, I tried to get into that place and I couldn't. The line was out the door when I went, and people doing 3D prints, stuff that that stuff just sort of is contagious.
Yeah.
And it makes it a place where people want to be. The top talent wants to be there. And then it's just sort of a upward cycle.
Right.
I don't think we can do the whole city at once. We're gonna have to start with some cores and sort of work our way up from there. And to get to the point you're talking about where you don't need that gap anymore. I mean, I can't think of. I mean, New York City, maybe like Miami, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
But wow, we've got a long way to go. Like I said, even Denver's not there.
Yeah.
And Denver's way ahead of us.
Yeah.
As far as the economics. So, and even there, the numbers don't support some of these things that we want to do. So,
Is there anything that you I didn't ask that you think is important? Is there anything about downtown that you want people to know? Is there anything about changes in downtown that you kind of want to see that we didn't talk about?
Oh gosh, we covered so much.
I know. Well, let me ask you this then. While you think about that, here's a question that I don't put on the the pre-questions because I want people's genuine kind of off the cuff response, and this is more pertaining to you, not Jacksonville. If there were a book written about you, what would the title be?
Oh man, that's really out there. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Maybe call it the Bachelor's Cookbook, since
The Bachelor's Cookbook.
I've taught myself how to feed myself, and not only literally but metaphorically in my being an entrepreneur and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I'll write that book.
There you go. What's next for you personally, business-wise, personally, as it relates to Jacksonville? What are you planning on doing in 2025, to deploy capital or invest in Jacksonville?
Well, that's a good question. I've got a few irons in the fire. The thing that I'm most excited about is a project it's going to be a multifamily project, but it's going to involve a lot of preservation because the family that owns the land is very adamant that they don't want to see it turn into a moonscape. So
Great.
So that's one thing that I'm working on.
Great.
And I'm doing some consulting for the city, and I'm going to reach out to some other markets and see where I can make some things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let us know how we can help.
Yeah.
And I look forward to reading that book once you get it written.
Will do.
Well, we appreciate the time. Thank you very much, and we will see you around town.
Thank you.
All right.